Hello again, and welcome back. Today, I will be going over what Horizon Zero Dawn weapons I use and like 2021 edition. I'll be going over what stats I feel you should favor on each weapon and or ammo variant, and a little bit about the weapons themselves. All of these weapons and video clips are as per usual on ultra hard difficulty. Check the video description if you are curious which coil variants are used in each weapon. The Blast Sling is one of the more misused and misunderstood weapons in this game. At first glance, the damage values of the ammo look fantastic. Blast bombs are tied with precision arrows, sticky bombs have more base damage than any other ammo variant. But in practice, blast ammo does not perform as well in contrast to arrows or the ice cannon. Blast ammo only does 25% extra damage to frozen targets compared to arrows, and ice cannon doing 200% extra damage to weak points and 300% extra damage to the body of frozen targets. If you destroy a weak point with a bomb, you'll see extra damage due to the weak point being destroyed. This is not multiplier damage. Blast Sling is, however, fantastic for low HP targets and interrupting machine attacks and or movements. This is a pure damage weapon, so again, damage followed by handling is the ideal way to coil this weapon. The Rattler is basically a shotgun that shoots crossbow bolts at a high rate of fire. I almost never use this weapon. Each ammo variant the Rattler offers is the worst of its type in the game. I'm not saying it is useless or that you should not enjoy or not use it, just that compared to other options, the Rattler is rather lackluster. I have my Rattler coiled with damage and handling in mind, because I feel this is the only ammo variant remotely worthwhile or fun to use on the Rattler. The Forgefire is quite the fun fire weapon, capable of one-shotting medium machines on ultra hard between a combination of the initial burst damage from the fire burster ammo and the damage over time effect that follows from fire. I personally enjoy terrorizing enemy humanoids with the flamethrower variant of this weapon. Burn, bandits, burn. This is not a weapon I use frequently, but it is a weapon I enjoy. I have this weapon set fire heavy rather than equal damage in fire because I mostly use it to burn humanoids. The Champion Bow is my personal favorite method for freezing machines. It has great range and has been a great tool for many sneaky burst kills. This weapon is coiled rather specifically. The goal is to have 50 freeze per arrow and as much handling as possible. The reason for this is because of how elemental threshold values work in this game. Base elemental machine thresholds for everything but corruption are 75 for small, 150 for medium, and 300 for large. You double or divide that number by 2 depending on if a machine is weak to an element or strong to an element. With this in mind, arrows staying at a multiple of 50 while maintaining the highest handling possible gets you the most value out of freeze arrows you can get on ultra hard, in my opinion. I'm not a fan of corruption arrows as I like to fight machines myself, but I understand the appeal for those who enjoy sitting back and watching the mayhem play out. I enjoy using shock arrows on power cells which cause an AoE shock explosion, immobilizing the target and possibly targets nearby. This is basically the only time I use shock arrows outside of hunting grounds. I do, however, have this shock variant of the Champion Bow just for funsies and hunting grounds. The Ropecaster. I'm honestly not a fan of this weapon and literally only use it for the hunting ground that requires it. The Ropecaster is nothing more than a CC weapon. The Ropecaster ties machines down to immobilize them, which in turn allows you an easier time hitting shots and reduces the amount of attacks you have to dodge. This weapon is, in my opinion, a waste of time and resources for a few reasons. I won't go over all of them now as they could likely fill an entire video. To the Ropecaster's credit, however, it can make combat much easier, so it's certainly useful to some players. One of the reasons I dislike the Ropecaster is because of how much I've noticed it inhibits players' abilities to grow mechanically within the game if they're leaning too heavily on it. Because of how easy of an answer the Ropecaster can be to the large majority of lethal problems players face, learning deeper combat mechanics is often not something Ropecaster users want or feel the need to do, which is sad because of how in-depth the combat system of this game is. I'm more than happy to give combat, mechanic, and gameplay tips to those who cannot fathom not using the Ropecaster. The Icerail is the best freeze weapon in the game, provided you are close enough to your target to take advantage of the weapon's effectiveness. This weapon freezes machines most efficiently with pure freeze coils. Handling just does not seem to scale as well as pure freeze does for this weapon. I use freeze coils with damage secondary. If freeze coils with handling secondary existed without cheating, I would test that out and likely use them. The Ice Cannon ammo variant of the Icerail is tied with the POWERSHOT bow for having the highest damage potential per shot in the game. Unlike a bow with arrows that spread, the Ice Cannon shoots a single projectile, meaning you can get full damage into one spot. In my opinion, the Ice Cannon is the sniper weapon of this game. This is, however, the most expensive ammo variant to use in this game, eating through chill water and shards alike. Since this is a pure damage ammo variant, one should coil for as much damage and handling as possible. The spear is the only melee combat weapon available in this game. Every attack the spear does gets a boost from spear damage coils. I mostly use melee for sneak attacks. Knockdowns take too many heavy attacks on ultra hard in order to be reliably effective against multiple targets. Besides for low HP targets on ultra hard, melee is going to take a while to kill an enemy, so I generally stay away from melee as a primary damage source. Only one type of coil for this weapon is available. Use the highest value coils of this type you can find. The Stormslinger is unique in that this weapon is as dangerous for the player as it is for enemies. The Stormslinger does more damage the longer it fires, ramping damage up to player and target alike until an overload occurs that knocks back the player and the weapon resets. This is a very satisfying weapon to use and generally worth a laugh when you die from the feedback damage. The feedback damage to the player can be mitigated a bit by using shock armor and overshield potions. Ironically, despite this weapon being called the Stormslinger, and despite this weapon seemingly revolving around the shock element, raw damage actually scales better than shock with this weapon for burst damage output and likely overall DPS in general. Having 2 or 3 high value handling coils with damage secondary allows for more burst damage output than 2 or 3 shock coils with damage secondary ever could, due to how impactful the fire rate increases and because of how poorly shock damage scales compared to raw damage on this weapon. However, if you find yourself dying too much due to feedback from a high fire rate, swapping out one of your handling coils with damage secondary for a shock coil with damage secondary to help control the feedback burst is not a bad idea. The POWERSHOT bow is tied for the highest damage potential, has a few neat uses, and one broken stat. Let's start with the broken stat. Tear Blast arrows are immensely useful for removing machine components and armor. However, Tear Blast arrows do not scale with Tear Coils. They have a predefined value of Tear Explosion per arrow defined by the difficulty, not by the Tear stat value. This makes Tear Coils worthless for this ammo variant. On any non-ultra hard difficulty, Tear Blast arrows do 200 tear value per arrow. On ultra hard, that value is halved and becomes 100. The focus of coiling on this weapon should be damage followed by handling. Handling is useful, but not nearly as important as damage in this situation because of how low the handling cap is for this weapon. Precision arrows are quite useful for openers, burst damage, and one-shots, but due to the low handling potential, I recommend using a striker and or hunter bow mid-combat as your primary raw damage source, due to the extra mobility higher handling weapons bring. Harvest arrows are useful for getting extra resource value from machine kills by knocking off canisters and various other parts for extra rewards. Harvest arrows are not intended for combat, but still do some damage. I've always been a bit of a pyro, and this game has some pretty satisfying fire effects. I feel like the striker bow is the most optimal method of delivering the fire elemental effect to an enemy due to the range and precision capable with fire arrows from this weapon. If you just want to light things on fire for crowd control, coil a fire striker or hunter bow prioritizing fire first and handling second. If you want the fire damage over time effect to have solid oomph, focus equally on fire as well as damage with handling the priority after equal fire and damage. Mixing fire and damage make the damage over time effect from fire be much more lethal. If you are looking for an all-around damage and fire bow, this is your solution. I recommend checking out the fire damage calculator linked in the description made by Casimir from the Horizon Zero Dawn subreddit. This is a really helpful tool to help you get this bow or any fire weapon just how you want it. I think the Striker Bow is the best all-around weapon in this game. It has amazing handling, does great fire damage, and has fantastic physical. I prefer to have one Striker and or Hunter Bow for fire and one Striker and or Hunter Bow for damage, because I want the best of both worlds for various reasons. This weapon is best coiled with damage priority followed by handling. Both are important. Some players prefer handling more so than damage on their 3 coil slot Striker Bow to ensure the draw speed is as fast as possible because of how important fully drawing DLC bows is. It is possible to have plus 150% damage and plus 200% handling from coils with Adept weapons obtained from a New Game Plus playthrough, which allows you to cap both optimal stats on this weapon, and in turn, makes the Hunter and Hardpoint ammo as good as it can get. Let's end this showing of weapons with a bang, shall we? Well, the TRIPCASTER does have elements and high elemental damage potential. Trapping is not really my thing, and I prefer my arrows for fire and only use shock arrows on power cells. So I use this exclusively for damage, and damage it most certainly does. At 438 per blast wire, with the game allowing the player to place 15 explosives at once, this weapon has a tad more than just enough damage to kill a Thunderjaw and its 6500 HP and effectively one shot on ultra hard with 15 blast wires. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe if you enjoyed the content and want to see more like this. You can follow me on Twitch for live Horizon Zero Dawn gameplay, twitch.tv/IPSYKKO. I hope you all have a great day and take care of yourselves out there.